its wake. So, what should those caught up in a hurricane or natural disaster abroad do to stay safe? Lloyd Figgins is an international risk expert. He joins me now from our central London studio. Many thanks indeed for joining us. So that is a question. How does one keep themselves safe?
Well, first of all, Gamal, we've got to be listening to what the authorities are actually saying to people about evacuation. And, when we look at what's going to come across to Florida and places like that, we've got to have a look at, it's an enormous logistical task to evacuate that amount of people. So not everybody is going to be able to get out of that situation. So they've then got to look at what are the next steps you can possibly take. Moving to higher ground, there's going to be a massive storm surge before the hurricane even hits. So water is going to become a problem, and that's what we saw with Katrina, where there was massive flooding. So people really need to get themselves away from it if they possibly can, and then if they can't evacuate from the scene itself, they need to get themselves to higher ground, and they need to start thinking about the things that they can do whilst the hurricane's actually upon them. So we're looking at things here about making sure they've got adequate stocks and stores of water and non-perishable foods. All of these things are going to be absolutely critical at the time the hurricane hits, and indeed for a while afterwards as well.
Not going to be easy with young children, with members of the elderly community?
No, it's not. And these are the challenges. And this is why people need to get themselves into an emergency mindset. Yes, these areas are affected by hurricanes on an annual basis. The hurricane season runs from June through to November, and sometimes a little bit outside of that. But what people have got to understand is this is an exceptional circumstance. We're talking here about they've had Harvey come in through Texas. We've now got Irma, and following that is Jose. This is an unprecedented set of circumstances, and the power of these storms is also something that hasn't been seen before. So people really need to change that mindset and make sure that they are adapting to the situation. Even if they think they've been through it before, they need to start thinking about the emergency measures that they should be taking.
The Prime Minister has been answering questions about this criticism that we've heard over the last 48 hours about the lack of readiness from the UK government. The Dutch were on islands in the Caribbean, the French are on their islands that they're connected to, and it's only now, it seems, that the British government is catching up. Because this is unprecedented, that's one issue, but they've known about this storm for some time. So are you surprised by the British government's response to this?
No, and I would echo what Boris Johnson has said about this. We've got a Royal Fleet auxiliary ship in the area. We're sending a naval force there as well, and RAF aircraft have taken off from Brize Norton today. They will be in the area later today, and they're going to set up on Barbados, and then they're going to use that as a forward operating post in order that they can then do a proper assessment on the areas that need aid the most, so that aid is going where it's needed the most, and those people who are affected the worst are going to get it first. And this is all part of making sure that you're doing a thorough risk assessment. It's not a case of just throwing aid at the problem. It needs to be strategic, and it needs to be targeted to those who need it the most and earliest.
Yeah, Lloyd, and from your expertise and experience, the people in Antigua and Barbuda have already been hit by one devastated hurricane, and now they're facing another one. I mean, how do you expect them to react and recover from a situation such as the one that we're seeing?
Well, this is going to be the real challenge, because often we see one hurricane hit and then people have the opportunity to then recover from that and start getting things in place. This is why the pre-planning is going to be so important, and people are going to need to do things like making sure that they can find a middle room in a house or wherever they can in a building, in a structure that is away from flying glass, flying debris. They need to think about things that they can do if they've still got running water, filling the bathtubs, filling all the basins, so that they've got a more ready supply of water over a longer period of time, and making sure that they have a radio and that they can listen to what advice is being given by the authorities. And batteries will run out, so it's things like making sure you've got supplies of that, or having things like clockwork radios that you can actually wind up rather than relying on batteries, on power and so on. And we've heard about families who haven't heard from people. Just a note of reassurance, that is quite normal when you have destruction on this scale, that communications do go down, and they do go down for a long period of time. And it's a case of actually maintaining that hope, but also for the people on the ground, it's a time between the hurricanes to actually reassess and resupply everything that they're going to need before the next one hits.
Lloyd, really appreciate your expertise and your time. Thank you. Do stay with us on Sky News, coming up in the sports.